Hello and welcome to the Making It in Asheville podcast. This is the Asheville-based podcast where each week we sit down with a local small business owner, entrepreneur, maker of some sort, ask them what they are making and how they are making it in Asheville. And this week, I'm joined by Eric Fabian of Sour House. And out of the gate, if you know anything about me, and Eric, you have no reason necessarily to know anything about me, but I love wordplay, I love puns, and I love the name Sour House.
Right on. I appreciate that.
So if you could, what is Sour House? And then immediately, how quickly did you get that as a name for the concept?
Right. Well, thanks for having me here. I'm excited to talk with you and be part of the series. So Sour House started, well, I won't give you the whole backstory right now. I'll just say that Sour House is a project to encourage more people to enjoy sourdough bread and homemade fermented foods. We have this vision of people gathering around a table and eating foods, sharing foods, making it for each other. We think in a world where people are increasingly disconnected, this is a nice thing. It's good for our health. It's good for us as people. And our contribution to that is we make products, tools for sourdough bakers. Our primary one is a countertop warmer for sourdough starter called Goldie. And then we also make some jars and some other accessories. And we've got lots of visions for other things that we want to make. But yeah, that's basically it.
Love it. How quickly did Sour House jump into your brain?
Okay, so we went through a naming phase at some point where we were kind of putting the brand stuff together, and I don't know. I had a handful of names. You know, we both were thinking about naming the product because everything started with what's now Goldie, sure. And so we were that, and do we want a bigger name? Blah blah blah. In fairness, I worked at a company that it's like a software company for recruiting software, and it's named Greenhouse. Mm-hmm. And I always felt like they made a good choice with that one. So I kind of took that format, and I was like, man, this idea of space for fermentation, the sourness, that kind of came. And I think I don't remember how many other names we had for the company. I think we initially thought maybe that would be a name for the product, and but I wanted to have a bigger brand, so we had room to grow on top of the product. So we had actually more conversations around the product name than Sour House. Sour House just kind of sat there for a while. I think everybody felt like that was pretty good, that I got feedback from, and it just kind of stuck around. And luckily, nobody else was using it for a product,
yeah, right?
And so it was just available, and so we kind of went from there.
I love it. I love the line of internal questionings that you asked, and I think it's often. I don't know if we've had many conversations about naming in all 120 something episodes so far, but you seem to ask the right question. So, A, does it exist anywhere else? Did you just do a quick USPTO assessment?
Yeah, and I used to consult around this stuff, and I love
sure.
naming is one of my favorite parts of branding. But so I feel like you do a quick search for kind of intellectual property, and you do a quick online search, and you do the main social media channels. That's a quick forecast. Kind of just is this an okay place to explore? And then I always advise people to get a lawyer to actually do another check, sure. But I think that's the basic thing. But it's also, I think, a part of general positioning. You want to see what else is in the marketplace of this sort of thing, and how do you imagine yourself sitting there, and does that name support you? And I've got some theories about what's a good name, what's a bad name, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, all ears. But the other thing that had stood out in the way that you described it is assessing product name versus the business name, and an example of how I often see that, fumbled, I'll say, is, and it was a part of my life for a moment, but a CrossFit gym that is Green Street CrossFit.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So you open a second one, what do you, not Green Street? You're just going to start a new name over, there's no continuity.
Yeah.
So Asheville CrossFit. Okay. Well, you can't, if you don't want to start one in Chattanooga. I guess there's some operational, you could start over, I guess. But like, what if we just named it something that can hold more than the geography, or name it something that allows you to get into kimchi fermenting and sauerkraut fermenting, because it's part of the same ecosystem.
Totally.
But it's not.
Yeah. And we, like in our case, we know that as like fermentation advocates, enthusiasts, like someday maybe we would start to create tools for other kind of fermentation type projects in the kitchen. So we wanted that space. I think the one way I think about it is like, I think there's always this tension when you're picking a name between digestibility and clarity, and then something that's like more romantic and aspirational. And I think it's a trade-off for me between, one is resources like your budget and like your ambitions, and the other thing is like the context you're in a bit, because I think of like Pizza Hut. Like Pizza Hut, sells itself, what you're getting, right? And so if you're trying to introduce a new brand, it's expensive to build awareness and understanding what you do, right? And so the more romantic you are, I think that the bigger cost up front of building awareness and understanding is going to be, but you're not going to have as much room to grow. And we think of like the classic, like Apple started as Apple Computers, and eventually they got well known enough they could drop computers. But, at first, like, what does an Apple have to do with a computer? It's a bit of a, you have to go through some mental gymnastics to get there. And so I think that's always a choice. And the kind of business you're doing, if you're doing a really small business and you're doing a CrossFit gym, you're probably more concerned if like, is there CrossFit in your community at all? Like, because if it's there, you can just say we're CrossFit, and people will come.
We have a license.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you're competing against like 10 of them, then you got to say why you're different. And then that part, your name choice is part of that.
Yeah. I love it. There's, I saw a really beautiful framework on how to think about names where it's like convergent, divergent exists as like words are totally new words. And you have different battles like for all of them. And so Sour House, again, it's the powerhouse of sourdough. It's the,
actually, yeah, I get it. I think we had a little kismet on all of it, because like we got lucky. I mean, even more so with Goldie, honestly, because we didn't.
Next step, yep.
Because we have this whole like story we tell around the Goldilocks zone, and we touched on the fairy tale thing a little bit, but we didn't conceptually start from like fairy tales and like and work backwards. Like we were just like thinking in terms of like, warmth and, kind of like, I originally thought of it as kind of like a starter cozy or like, much more functional kind of things. And something about that, the warmth of that name kind of came to us, and it actually was just like good fortune that it like led into all this like fairy tale stuff that we now kind of lean into more and use as like a means to kind of help, make sourdough, which can be somewhat intimidating, has like a learning curve, seem a little more accessible to people, and like help familiarize themselves with not only the practice of sourdough home baking, but with Sour House, the company and the brand and the thing we're trying to do. So it's like, that was just good fortune. We're lucky it all worked out. Like, it doesn't always work so cleanly, it's like, yeah.
Awesome. So the touches of gold in the overall brand and aesthetic is informed by
like,
Goldie.
And I can't remember the exact order of things now, but like, I think my co-founder, Jenny, like, I think we were probably thinking of colors and stuff around that same time, basic palettes. And I think she probably brought the gold idea to the table anyways. And so that probably was in there somewhere, like that mix. Yeah.
So clean. So talk to us about Goldie. Is this considered Goldie? So if you're not watching on YouTube, consider it. But would this be a Goldie setup?
So the jars are sold separately because Goldie works with any jar that fits inside. But Goldie is a very simple countertop warmer for sourdough starter jars. And so it just consists of a heating base, a glass cloche, which is what we call the transparent top. And it's a simple device. You put your jar inside. When you plug it in, a single light comes on the front. That's either blue, gold, or red. And that tells you, based on the thermometer that's at the base, whether the environment inside Goldie is either below 75 degrees. That's blue. Between 75 and 82 degrees, which we call the Goldilocks zone. That's like where you want your starter to be most active, or above 82 degrees, where it's going to be a little warm and start to get away from you a little bit. And there's one switch on the back. It's an auto warming on off switch. So if you flip that switch on, a little light comes on the bottom. It warms up the base with a very gentle heat to keep your jar of starter in the Goldilocks zone. So if you're home, most of us live in environments that are like 68, 70 degrees all year round with between heat and air conditioning. That's about 5-10 degrees lower than starter likes. Starter likes the spa life. And it, and I think one of the hard conceptual things as a baker is to realize that like, hey, I might be comfortable, but my starter would like it to be a little bit warmer.
Just wants a little sweater.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is meant to just warm it up a little bit. And it never will overheat your starter, unlike like other, kind of DIY kind of heating devices people use. Like it uses a very gentle heat. A lot of like, if you repurpose like a heating pad or a mugworm or something, that's going to like blast it with heat until it gets to a place and then kind of on off to kind of keep it there. Cause it's really designed to get warmer than what ours is. This doesn't need that much heat. And so by keeping it really low, we're able to not only be very gentle to the starter and just give it what it needs, but also it really reduces the energy footprint of this thing. It's a USB plug-in, so it works worldwide with your local kind of adapter to your wall. And, it's using just like at max 5 watts of energy at any point. And that's like, half, a fourth of what even if you put it, a lot of people as a DIY solution for this will put a jar starter in the oven with the oven light on.
Sure.
Like an oven light, we're talking like 40 watts or something. And like so it's like even that, it's like more efficient. So by keeping it simple and small and like whatever, we feel like, there's lots of little kind of experience things we try to solve. We do sell jars as well, starter jars in a pint and a quart size. And they come with a little rubber band to mark where your starter is inside of it. So you can tell when it doubles, and it's meant to like look nice together and it has a good fit for Goldie, but you can use any jar. It was built, originally we built it around a mason jar and, just made sure what people typically use will work in there.
And it's absolutely beautiful. Again, check out Instagram or watch on YouTube. Execution on the aesthetic from name to brand to Goldie. And do you have a cute name for the jar also?
We just call those the Sour House starter jars. We're much more kind of frank about those because we have a little less mythology there. But but I do want to give credit. My co-founder, Jenny Olson, who is a professional industrial designer, like she brings a lot. I was a sourdough baker, and when COVID started and like I saw everybody kind of getting excited about sourdough and asking me for tips, like people were starting little micro bakeries. I started thinking about products for these folks. And I needed, when I made my first starter, I went through a period where my starter took like a month because it was too cold. Eventually I figured out. And once I warmed it up, it was like ready to go. And so I was like, oh man, this would help people. And so I had a basic idea of this functionally like a glass top with a little warming base. And I brought it to Jenny for some feedback initially. And then eventually we started working on it. But like a lot of these like refinements, come from long conversations, but she's definitely like I'm real fortunate that we found our collaboration because we both have like these peculiarities and kind of things that we care a lot about. And like, they're not always the same thing, but I think through our dialogue and things seem to come out pretty well. And so like, when we talk about names, like I have a lot of opinions about naming, but she gave me a lot of feedback on it, and we had battles about that. And the same with the visuals. Like she really, she invented the idea of like the handle on the side, which is there's a whole discussion around the utility of that and why it's designed like that. The basic kind of like consistency around color and like stuff, like these are things she really brought to the table. She originally kind of had the initial idea to do a jar because she felt like that was a pain point for her. And like, so it's like that conversation is a big part of how we make stuff,
I love it. And I was just gonna, in talking about the look and the feel and the execution here, talk about how while it's maybe not the biggest deal. So like we kind of offline, we had discussed trying to bring cool brands and products to this space that, you could argue like people have been making sourdough since forever. Mm-hmm. Who needs new cool products.
Yeah.
When, I don't know, bread has been rising forever,
Yep.
so to speak. But there was just a video that you posted the other day on Instagram of the little pain of cleaning the top of the mason jar, a ball typically, where it like screws on the lid. And that is a real pain.
Yeah.
It stinks.
So if you don't bake, sourdough starter is kind of messy, and then when it dries in like really like concrete. And so if you have a threads on your jar, even if you're very careful, you tend to get some starter in there and tends to get gunked up, and it's a pain to clean. And we want to encourage people to, if you're caring for a starter, you have to feed it either every day on the counter or at least once a week or so if you keep it in the fridge. And we don't want those kind of annoyances to be a psychological barrier to taking care of your starter and to bake more bread. And so solving that, I think, makes people's life a little easier. It makes for a cleaner design. So that's a nice thing of it. But also it just takes away. Do you need a special jar for starter? No. And like, you can, we know people who keep their starter in like leftover, like to go plastic containers, right? And, and it works fine. And, but if you're, just looking to kind of like try something new, experiment, experimentation is a big part of sourdough baking. And if you're somebody who loves like some of our customers are people who just like have beautiful kitchens and they want everything to look perfect. And like, so like there's definitely a market for that. So it's meant to be, we don't want to create just beautiful things. We want to create functional things, but that we think are attractive to ourselves or at least somebody. Sure. And have it all be coherent.
Well, direct hit.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. I would love to get into the execution of the concept now. So, Jenny, was she already a friend? Was she already in your network?
Yeah, we knew each other for years. I used to live up in Brooklyn, New York, and she's still up there. And so we were friends.
Awesome. And so you have a concept. Talk me through early days, right? So I know that there's a Kickstarter that shows up. Was anything, there's a tendency, or has been in the last decade, let's say, of, we're already making this product. Purchase orders are in. It's done. We're going to launch a Kickstarter as like a marketing coming out party, and we're going to crush it. And some people have done absolutely absurd volume through Kickstarter. Other people, it's like, hey, we have this idea. Look at the idea. Here are some renderings. Do you think this is cool, internet? If yes, like send us money and we'll do it. That's just one way to launch a business. What was going on in your mind early days? How did you launch? How did you think about launching? Why Kickstarter versus any other way? So
I had left New York. We were staying with family in Florida because of COVID. I had some little kids and we were looking for more space, but I was suddenly like gone from being a consultant to stay-at-home dad. So I was looking for stuff to do. I had this idea, started talking with it. I thought we were going to launch it on Kickstarter in a few months. And I think in normal times with no kids, maybe that would have been possible, but we actually ended up taking like basically 2 years to do it. And so initially it was like just a nights and weekends kind of thing where we were just like step by step kind of taking the idea, doing experiments on the functionality of what would become Goldie, going through a design process, building the brand out. We had a false start where we thought we would launch it in 2021, like 2021, like March. And so we launched our brand, started a storytelling campaign, put up our social and stuff. But then the product wasn't quite ready. It was actually the glass on top of Goldie. It's just real complicated to do that, and so it ended up taking longer, and so we persisted and then launched our campaign. I by default have advised on Kickstarter campaigns. My wife was an early employee at Kickstarter, so so I'm like,
you're in. Yeah.
I'm like very aware of what Kickstarter is, and I think people do use it for marketing. But for us, we bootstrapped this thing. We still are bootstrapping this, and so we're taking a low risk, needs to be profitable. The market needs to prove that they want this thing kind of approach, and it's low resourced from the beginning. And, fortunate, Jenny and I both have kind of skill sets that we can do a lot of stuff ourselves, but to at least get it started, it just took longer, I think, that way than probably I would have liked. And so that's kind of like why I just always assume we do Kickstarter to validate it and then to get at least cash to like make a first round of production. And then I also know that like building a community around Kickstarter's nice and focused, and it helps you build that brand. It gives you a point to grow from, rather than just trying to say to the world, hey, we're here.
Hello. Are you watching on YouTube, listening on your favorite podcast player? If you're not on YouTube, perhaps consider it, because behind us, you would notice that we are in an absolutely beautiful space, and that space is our season sponsor, Earnest Ready-Made Warehousing. And so if you're not familiar with Earnest, it is fantastic. I am joined here by my wife, Sarah Ubertaccio, founder of QB Cucina, and one of Earnest's newest clients.
Yeah, excited to be back on the podcast.
Great to have you back. Episode 110 if you haven't listened before. But what we want to talk about today is why you chose Earnest and what makes Earnest stand out, let's say, compared to finding a new office space in town to fulfill from. As a very high level, Earnest is a 30,000 square foot facility on Sweeten Creek, just south of Asheville. Huge facility, beautiful facility. Why did you choose to go with Earnest instead of any other place in Asheville?
Yeah, well, I have a small growing business, e-commerce. We sell pasta tools and Italian kitchenware. And we currently outgrew the space that we were in and really needed a different kind of space. And so I love Earnest. I love the fact that as we grow, Earnest can scale with us. So they have different sized co-warehousing spaces. So if we grow bigger, we can just quickly move over to a different space within the same building, which is a really huge time saver. I also really love that they have daily, sometimes multiple times a day, pickups from UPS, FedEx, and USPS. So we don't have to worry about packages getting lost or stolen, and our team doesn't have to drop them off at the post office, and it just saves us all a bunch of time and headache. And also they have temperature controlled rooms, which for a business like us, one of our products is pasta flour. It's really sensitive to temperature. It's really, really important for us to make sure that our products are secure and not getting damaged while they're being stored in our warehouse. And I love all the other amenities. They have a photography studio so we can quickly photograph our products. They have a full break room. They have co-working space that we're able to use for our meetings with team members and other people that may come to see us. And then just the sense of community, being around other small businesses is something that we currently don't have. And I'm really, really looking forward to connecting with others here.
I love that. EarnestReady.com if you've not visited that before, or you can check out makingitinasheville.com/Earnest. And we have a bunch of information about the partnership we've built for this season, as well as some perhaps special discounts and incentives. If you happen to be a e-commerce business or the right fit for Earnest, you should definitely check out makingitinasheville.com/Earnest, ERNEST. And back to the episode. Tactically, how did you, knowing that you've consulted on Kickstarters, how did you approach the launch? How did you approach the campaign?
Well, I mean, I'm of a different mind about marketing Kickstarter than some people. Kickstarter has evolved in a way where it's now very paid ad driven, but even that started to kind of decline as paid ads has started to decline in its effectiveness. So
yeah, I would say 2019 to like 2021, it was top Kickstarter campaigns, like a count, but it wasn't a count that actually did it. It was just one campaign paying some ad agency to run, indirect ads for a campaign, and people would seemingly print money when done right.
We missed the golden age of that.
Yeah.
And we also actually missed the golden age of the sourdough boom of COVID. That was really useful for us to launch, for me to convince my wife and other people that this is a good idea. But we didn't actually benefit from all that. So we took an approach of we know we need to create a good page with a good video. We need to have a story. As a brand, we need to have a good story. We need to have products and have a selection of rewards that are XYZ, all the basic Kickstarter stuff. But and we did attempt to do digital marketing beforehand. I did kind of forecast, here's how many people we'd like to have on a list before we launched. We didn't get there, but we had something. But we ended up building that over a course of a year, because we did have that kind of like false start where we were public and we had to like do a song and dance and just we were just on Instagram. So we were just like, okay, here we are. And like, we were doing stuff. And we got, built a lot of support and community around just the product development process, getting feedback from people, reach out to people who, were both people, our friends and so on, but maybe had, Instagram followings or whatever as part of the feedback process. And, generally the one thing I would advise any entrepreneur is like, if you can find a space that has a very welcoming, nice community, it makes things so much easier. And like
sourdough seems like it would be good people,
super friendly, helpful people. And like people still, for the most part, do it because it's a passion rather than a business. And so a lot of the way that the internet has been commodified and Kickstarter has been professionalized, like we were able to avoid that a little bit. And then also I think I am skeptical of how Kickstarter has professionalized and how the economics of it work. Like, people don't believe you can make a profitable Kickstarter campaign anymore, which is true if you like outsource everything and you like hire digital agencies that are going to like do huge ad campaigns, paid ads, but basically you're selling at cost because you just want to create this huge campaign. And like, there's still, I think, a need for Kickstarter as a platform to have nice projects that tell nice stories and like showcase how it's still a kind of a culturally relevant place for cool things to get made. And I think that people at the end of the day in the long game still do want to kind of be a part of interesting brands and interesting products that have been carefully made, and and that's just kind of who Jenny and I are. So we took that path, we launched, we had like all kinds of problems with like digital marketing, like Facebook locked us down. It was like, I forget now, but it was like the week before we were supposed to launch, we had been testing a campaign and they stopped allowing us to kind of increase our budgets because there was some sort of internal thing. And, Facebook's awful to communicate with. So it's like, it took us literally like 3 weeks to get it cleared up. So we had to do half our campaign with like an ad budget of something like $25 a day. And like, it was just like nothing. And so luckily, we had a little bit of a list. We launched the list. We had some people who were ready to kind of help. And then once the basic Kickstarter strategy, if you don't know this and you're listening to this, is that you have to have a good first 24, 48 hours, 72 hours, because that makes all kinds of other good things happen. Like, you have to, that triggers the algorithm at Kickstarter or whatever that is, that you're a positive performer.
And if you're going to get any PR, it's because you crushed it in your first few days. And it's a exciting thing. It's a shot that's already
so
landed versus will this be a
and the whole game with Kickstarter is like it is vaporware. You're promising, you're probably, unless you're like Misen or something now, like you're promising something that it's just an idea. You have whatever credibility you bring to the table, but you haven't done this thing before, and so your first task is to convince people that this is real and will happen, and so getting some momentum helps show that. So we did achieve that in the first, I forget, 48 hours or something. We hit our target.
What was the target?
We set it, I don't know off the top of my head. We set it at a reasonable place. So it was something like 14 or 18,000, I think. And so it was like, I forget all the numbers off the top of my head, but there's a certain percentage of funding, like once you hit that, you're likely to get more. And like, I did some calculations and we actually figured out like, what do we actually need to produce a minimum amount of stuff? So we were actually trying to fund the production. So we built our numbers around that. And we made some bets. And so we were able to hit our target within that first time frame. That led to growth. We got some support from Kickstarter because at a certain point, like they see things. So we got put into like, certain newsletters and stuff. And that's really key because like that reaches a lot of people who back Kickstarter projects. And we were very active in communicating. That's something else people don't do so much, is like, we were responsive to people's things. We were putting updates out constantly. Some people told us we put too many updates out, it's like,
rather that than the alternative.
Yeah. And so we just communicate a lot and try to make a big thing. We got lucky. Our video, I thought, came together really well. And, we just made that ourselves. And so we saved a lot of money. I'm doing a lot of stuff ourselves, pulling up friends and stuff. But we also happen to have backgrounds that allow us to do that. And then we got lucky in some ways, but we also, things went south in a lot of ways. And I think fundamentally a successful strategy is like one where, 50% of things go wrong and you still succeed, then
home run.
We probably could have done double what we did, but that's fine. We got through the goal, and then that led us to the ability to produce a first round. And then your big thing is delivering on that, and trying to get to people. We were trying to get to people before Christmas, which we ended up doing. We did do an Indiegogo campaign, kind of the background. That's the intermediate time during it. I don't know if I'd do that again, honestly. It was more of a pain than it was worth.
Interesting. That is a quick, fast follow is what a lot of...
Yeah. I think it was because partially, one, it didn't end up being so ad driven. The ads are not working quite as well. And we were in the spring coming now into the summer, which now I understand the seasonality of my business is like the summer when it's hot out, there's less baking happening. So people are a little less engaged. But it also, I feel like the whole shit, people, there's credibility issues with I don't think Indiegogo still is as credible as Kickstarter. A lot of people, we have to convince even what Kickstarter is, that it's safe and whatever, just to be a part of it. And and then without the timeline, of 30 days, a certain goal, it's not as exciting. And so I think it's just harder to market around an evergreen thing, which is a new concept like ours. We invented a little category with our thing, and constantly having to generate new exciting things during those months when we were trying to produce it. It was something that ended up going more on the back burner for us.
That makes a ton of sense to me. I want to say 3 questions popped up in that, more, but the 3 that I'm thinking about are, when it came to the look and feel of the brand during the Kickstarter, how closely did it resemble what we see today?
Pretty close. I mean, we haven't done a rebrand of any sort yet.
So who did that? Was that you?
We did it together, Jenny and I. She's
awesome.
not, she's
So industrial design, there's some overlap in just being able to make beautiful things.
Yes, she has a lot of taste, and I think that goes a long way. And I have my humble opinions as well.
Sure.
She would hesitate to call herself a graphic designer, and and I think because her standards are quite high. But from my point of view as a scrappy marketer and stuff, and who likes to be on the startup side of things, we have plenty of resources between us to be able to do enough visuals to get us there. But it is a burden to generate everything, and that's now where we're at. More of a problem is we just don't have time to do everything. Yeah. And we were fortunate, Jenny's partner is somebody who has a background in film and TV, and so we were able to bring him down, and he got an iPad to shoot our video, and so it was Jenny kind of storyboarded our video, and I came up with the script, and we argued about the script, and I did a lot of the performing in the script, and so it's you see my son's hands in it, and it's just it's a very handmade, homemade thing, and that we just happen to have the experience and stuff to do at a certain level, but it's we can only take it so far with the little bit of resources we have, but it was enough.
Awesome. And I that's kind of what I guess. I just wanted to make sure. And then when thinking about list building pre-launch, what tactics, techniques, strategy, thought, how did you attempt to grow a list?
We tried, initially we came up with a campaign of it was 2021. It was we wanted to collect and share positive sourdough baking stories during COVID. And so that was the whole thing. We launched our Instagram at that time, and we built kind of a call and pulled that in. So that got us some initial reasons to talk to some other brands and some influencers, who we then also talked to. We were hey, we're making this product, and we started talking to them about this thing behind the scenes. So it started to create that back end conversation. We started to attract some, by doing a launch, a giveaway, or with some other brands. It got us some initial kind of awareness in terms of our Instagram, and then people submitted to the thing, signed up. We created a landing page for the Kickstarter in particular, which we launched a little bit after well, it ended up being a lot after it, like I guess about a year after it, but we did create a landing page where we were like, hey, we're releasing this thing, if you're interested. And we tried different stuff. We did some paid ads at a very low rate. We went out on forums and stuff. There's a lot of activity on the Facebook forums around sourdough baking. And it was really a grind though. It's like building our Instagram, like we kind of, it was like a week to week kind of grind of building up a following there. And it's been a lot easier to build our list once we've had concrete things to sell.
For sure.
Yeah.
Heard. And then you get funded, right? And so to your point, I think the promise of an Indiegogo is just lower, not as strong as, hey, this was a 30-day, 45-day campaign. What did you end up going with?
We did 30-day.
30-day.
I don't think there's a right solution. Some people succeed with a week. It's
and then when the ads engine was running, some people were doing like 60-day.
Yeah, you could stretch it out.
You could stretch it out because you crush it.
Yeah, it just kind of depends on different factors. We also knew we wanted to end by a certain time because we needed to get the production in line for Christmas and all that kind of stuff.
Cool. So it goes through, you get your production order. A couple of things I'm thinking about is the transition from probably a website that's a concept to a website that is a storefront.
Yeah.
And then, early days of, okay, we have a business. What do we do now?
Yes.
First question, I think you're on Shopify. I looked the other day. Okay, so you're on Shopify. Always been on Shopify. De facto.
Started as a very simple WordPress site, which I'm not a huge fan of WordPress's interface. But that was really bare bones. That got us through that storytelling campaign, and then through essentially we launched it after Kickstarter went. So then we knew, okay, so we're going to build this as e-commerce first. We built all of our models in terms of the economics of the products around e-commerce first, with wholesale as a kind of second thing, because we still didn't know what wholesale even wanted. It's like once we start selling these things, and not just doing a Kickstarter campaign, are people going to want it? So step by step, we've tried to be responsible at each goal. And so we put up Shopify. It seemed to be the most easy. It was the easy choice. It served a lot of people. The prices weren't terrible, but it was also took away a lot of the hassle of some things. Mm-hmm. I don't love the lack of control over the design sometimes, but all the back end integration and stuff are super helpful. So we went to Shopify. We used it initially as just a sort of a replacement for our informational website, and then we're able to partially fulfill orders using the Shopify backend when we were dealing with Kickstarter. We got a 3PL set up. We got our production going, and just the whole shipping and logistics part of getting stuff, because we make stuff overseas and bring it over to warehouses. That's a whole thing I didn't really understand and had to figure out, and still figuring out. So we had to put all that kind of stuff in place. We had delays on the production side that we had to deal with, and so it was it's a real wrestling match to kind of get things out the door and finished. But we did, it was that transition to Shopify was creating a store, and we launched that. I don't know, it was something the store opened its doors for public sales shortly after we delivered the products. So it was December 17th. So we got in there just under the line for Christmas. We were hoping to get it earlier and have a full holiday selling season. Yeah. But we did get everybody's stuff to them by Christmas. So we were stoked about that.
Was that of 21 or 22?
That would have been 22. And 22. So we've had our store up now, whatever, 8 months or something, 6 months. Yeah. On and selling. Yeah.
Cool. I have more questions. So the transition to Shopify, did you pull in any consultants for that? Did you do it
We hired somebody to help us with the design, because again, we have a lot of ambitions and we're fussy about especially visuals, but we also can only do so much. I could probably figure out the coding for Shopify, but it's do I want to do that? And it pains me that I can't always fix things I want to fix quickly, but it's not easy. Finding a good, what we find is because we're kind of an anomaly because we want to do things right. And I know from my life in business that there's the expensive ad agency layer of the world, which can be beautiful, but also can be quite generic and goes through trends that I don't necessarily want to be a part of, that aren't worth the value. And then there's this like scrappy like Fiverr world where like occasionally you find gems, but for the most part, they're just giving you templates and like it's very generic, and the quality might be bad. The communication would be bad. That's one thing I value more and more as we do this is like good communication is if it's not there, it makes my life a lot more difficult. And so we were definitely trying to do a budget thing. We were hiring some people. We found people like Shopify recommended. We looked on Fiverr and that kind of thing, and we found somebody who could help us like basically port over what we had before. But we ended up doing the design essentially ourselves. Like we were like, they wanted to give us templates, and we were like, change this, and we ended up going through all these rounds, and it was like way more expensive than we would have liked. It's way cheaper than if we just farmed it out to somebody, and you know, it's still kind of a handmade thing, and we still would like things to be better, but it got us there. And like we, at a certain point, we were just like, okay, we just like, this is good enough. We'll have to just go with this.
Heard.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, that is the balancing act. It's like, you know, if it's not, what do they say? If it's not good enough to do it right the first time, it'll be bad enough to do it twice or something. So it's like, you know, and
yeah, when there's like that, don't let the good be the
enemy of the great,
or the
whatever.
perfect to be the enemy of the good.
Yeah. And so, you know, at a certain point, it's like, does that pixel affect the sourdough enthusiast or the partner or the cousin or the mother of a sourdough enthusiast who wants to give a meaningful gift? Probably not. I always argue that like the most important part of a website are the words on it, and like everything else supports the words. And I imagine the words have always been pretty dialed.
I'm probably more on the word side, and my real bread and butter is probably events and like over designing experiences, and but words are part of that. And like, but Jenny is a hardcore visual person, and I'm somewhat agnostic about this debate because I have to be in my kind of corner of marketing, but like I know that there's purely visual people that exist, and there's people who are going to like things like we make because they have a visual point of view, sure. And they're not like just a commodity. So we don't want to like not give those people the visual marketing stuff that they want, because that's partially how they were going to validate us. But does everything have to be perfect? Should we let those kind of needs for perfectionism delay us too long? It's a tension we still deal with. Like, you know, we could move faster than we do, and we could be more perfectionistic. Right now, we're somewhere in the middle, and I don't know if it's the right spot, but yeah, that's where we are.
We interrupt this episode with a horror story, an e-commerce horror story that my wife, Sarah Ubertaccio, experienced, but I'm going to preface, she's not alone. You might be an e-commerce store owner. You might have a friend who's an e-commerce store owner, and this story is universal, though specific. Sarah, please take it away.
Yeah, well, I own a small business called QB Cucina, and we sell Italian pasta tools and kitchenware. And in our previous space where we were fulfilling from, one day my employee was packaging up a bunch of packages to ship via UPS, and UPS did not pick up from this location. And so she was going to package them up and take them out to the car and drive them to UPS. Well, it was raining a lot that day.
As it tends to here in Asheville. Yes,
as it tends to here in Asheville. And on her way, taking the dolly out to her car, some packages flew off the dolly, were soaking wet. She was soaking wet, and then she had to repackage them, like go back up to the office and repackage them because they were ruined and couldn't be shipped out. So yeah. And
I'm so sorry to hear that story. That's a heartbreaker. Now you don't have to worry about that happening anymore because you work at Ernest Ready-Made Warehouse, and they have daily pickups and deliveries from FedEx, UPS, and USPS.
Yes, it's like suddenly we have a valet and concierge at our fingertips, which is amazing. They have daily pickups from all the major shipping carriers, and they have a huge loading dock so we can receive our shipments very easily 24 hours of the day, every day of the week, which is amazing.
To learn more about Ernest Ready-Made Warehouse, visit makingitinasheville.com/Ernest, ERNEST. We have all sorts of information about this season, about our sponsor, Ernest Ready-Made, and offer a very special incentive for those of you who are small business owners in Asheville who could benefit from this facility. Back to the episode. When thinking then about the transition from, hey, we have this idea that we want to create with you, to, hey, we have this product, would you like to buy it? What is in the mix that y'all are using right now? Like what has worked in the last 8 months? Have there been things that you've let go of?
Okay, like the marketing mix and the offers and that.
Yeah, how are you thinking about it?
Well, we're still just learning our year. Like we haven't been through a full year. Yeah, so we don't know. And so we have to make a lot of guesses. I think we had a little bit of like tailwinds from Kickstarter and just launching and saying, hey, we're here at the sort of around Christmas that carried us into the spring. From my conversations with other businesses in this kind of area, sourdough sales can kind of extend into May, depending on where you are in the world. And then there's a slower time in the summer, and then it comes back for holidays and, cold weather, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere. What we find is that our ads started working a lot better once we had a product. And so our digital ads do a certain baseline. They are working from a profitability point of view, cool. What I'm not finding is scale. And I'm not sure if that's just the timing of like, we're not to the holidays yet or what.
You running them yourselves? No,
I have a person helping with that. And that's not something I'm like an expert at and can't really do it well. And I'm not totally convinced what the reason is, why. Like, I don't know if it's seasonal factors. I don't know if it's our product. I don't know if it's the size of our audience. I don't know if it's just exhaustion around sourdough stuff from post-COVID. Like, I don't know why. It could be just chaos at, Facebook. It's like, it could be any kind of stuff. So we're just like watching, but it's profitable and it gives us a baseline of business, right? And like, that's really reassuring because it gives us one acquisition channel. Now we have something of a list, so I am able to send out a newsletter if we have some kind of new sale or deal or whatever, or just educational stuff, and get responses and have something happen now. So that's helpful. We do referral marketing in a few different ways. One is we offer a deal to right now we use referral candy. It offers like people who buy it the chance to kind of give a code to a friend for 10% off, and they get $10 for it. That's worked well to kind of give us a certain percent of sales.
What are we looking at on like an average order size or something to that effect? How are you thinking about like a first transaction versus a lifetime?
Well,
because 10% might be something. It might be a small bit. $10 might be something. It might be a small bit.
For me, it's like it's. I think we can afford it. Like, but our average order size changed a lot because like initially Goldie and the jars sold together as a unit in Kickstarter, and we're very much tied together in the early days. But now we're seeing a lot more either like single jar sales that are either reorders, or we're starting to advertise a little bit just jars. And so sometimes that's a kind of a path in, and people buy a jar or two and then maybe think about a Goldie later. Some people don't need a Goldie. They just like, they live in a warm house or whatever. And like, but a jar is really their solution they need. So our average order dollar like basket size has gone down, and I don't really have, I feel like, a good read on that yet. Like, I feel like I had a concept of like, call it $100 or something, average sale value, and like, it's gone down, but it goes back up. It's very bouncy right now. And I can tell on like a holistic level when I look at my budgets that, we're still profitable around the same kind of estimates that I want. So I'm kind of waiting and seeing how this evolves. I do cap my digital ads though, based on conversion cost of acquisition, rather than just do like clicks or something. Sure. Like I have technically, my guy has Facebook like putting a ceiling on how much it costs to acquire somebody. So I'm sure if I like juice the numbers more, went for if I accepted lower margins or whatever, I could scale up. But that's not something I'm going to even test right now because it's summer and it's just not the right season. Yeah. I've also tried to offset it a little bit by reaching out to Australia, and because that's a sourdough country, and so reverse climate. They're in their winter right now. As we're talking here, it's summer in Asheville, and so we just, for instance, did a webinar with an Australian-based home baker, as a way to just like engage that community a little more. We've done several webinars. Those do a little bit of something. They're like a nice model, but they're not like super profitable or whatever, but it's a way of engaging and testing things. And I think for us, the next channel is to do a lot more PR, and
gift guides.
Yeah, we didn't really do that last year. And the gift guide thing around Kickstarter has gone down. Like there's not as much PR coverage of Kickstarter as it once was.
Sure.
So this year is kind of like our coming out for that. And then, we're going to, we right now use Facebook, Instagram, which are the two places sourdough bakers really congregate. TikTok is less important, but we have kind of an eye on it, and we use Google ads, but we need to do more YouTube content. We need to just generate more content. Like anytime we post anything like on Instagram, stuff happens, but we just don't have we still are doing it all ourselves and don't have a good system for creating content yet that's like up to our standard. And so again, it's that thing of like bootstrapping it. We're being lean on our resources. We're not ready to hire like full agencies, but we also really are particular about what we're putting out there visually and content wise. So we're just trying to figure out how to walk that line.
Well, what I do see does seem really clean. How are you producing the videos that I see on Instagram right now?
We do it ourselves. Jenny's been doing a lot of them recently. So she's done a couple of these like nice, clean countertop things, like really about clean. Starter, states of starter, and like, drying starter and stuff. We've gone through phases of our Instagram for like early days. It was all like found, kind of like copyright free imagery of bread, and then we would do like these jokey captions that we would like back and forth like have conversations around, and like we just filled our feed with that for a long time. And then we started to do some giveaways, and we still do occasional giveaways, and we did some like user generated content where we call to show off their starter and their name, tell us the story about it. So we kind of interviewed people's starters, and we've done all kinds of like little moves, and they're fine and fun. They're a lot of work though, and I can't say that we have found a thing that's like the perfect formula for us on there, and so we just keep trying stuff.
Great. Yeah, I mean, it all looks clean. You're at, I want to say, around 9,000 followers after about 9 months or 8 months in the game.
I mean, technically we've been doing it for 2 years, grind up 2 years, and so it's like we worked our way up from like, a few hundred followers to like 1,000, or we launched with something like, I can't even remember now. We probably had 1,000 followers or something when we launched on Kickstarter or something like that.
Makes sense.
But at the end of the day, Instagram's great and it's important, but I think the email list is the most important thing.
You'd never hear me say anything other than that. Well, how are you thinking about emails today? You said newsletter.
Also neglectful. I mean, mostly I do that stuff.
Sure.
And like for me,
how about this? What do you use?
I actually use MailerLite, which is like I use my consulting business because it was cheap, and so I probably at some point we should move to that Klaviyo.
One of the two.
But it's just like, I don't really want to pay that much money yet. And I see the integrations, I see all the stuff, but it's just like all these features, it's just more work for me. And so from an efficiency point of view, I just need a way to send out an email, track some links, that kind of thing, have people subscribe, create landing pages. And so it's good enough for me right now. I do, so I create a lot of that content, but so the copywriting piece of it, I think, is important. I'm not an expert at it. I've studied it some, but I think that more importantly is having things to talk about. And so obviously having new products, that's great. But as a brand I'm like kind of a brand marketer. So my goal is like, we need to create stories or events or anything that's like new that we can talk about. And then there's like many expressions of that content should trickle through your system as however mature your system is. And so like when we do a webinar, that gives me something to talk about and email people about. And also it's like nice to be able to give people something that's like free, you know, just sign up for it and like not ask them to buy something. So trying to balance that, you know, and then, you know, we have deals and stuff that we're doing $1 shipping deal right now. And you know, I'll let people know about those sorts of things, but I try to keep in mind, like we have a good chunk of our list are people who have bought from us before, but we're limited in the number of other products we have yet. So
yeah, I was going to ask, how many SKUs are we looking at this point?
So the core things is Goldie and the 2 jars. And then we also have a pint and quart. And then we have a fridge magnet that we sell. We sell a 3-pack of the cooling pucks, but you get one with Goldie. So that's like a secondary kind of accessory for just a small market. And then we have like a replacement cloche. And we also we've been testing out some guest brands. So like right now we have a mixing bowl from East Fork, who's a neighbor here in Asheville, that we have on our site. We may do some other kind of things like that to kind of create some other opportunities, but you know, just like sell more stuff, but also to kind of like position ourselves and all that kind of thing. So it's all that. But I think, to me, it's like having new stories to tell and having things that add value to our followers and our fans and our customers. And, you know, we want to give them stuff to buy, but we also want to give them the reason to buy and keep them engaged. Yeah. And so that takes time.
Seemed like you got a strong vision of things. When thinking about, so we're past halfway, 2023, there's a lot of things you could do as you're preparing for your first full year and thinking ahead to 2024. How are you attempting to prioritize all of what could happen?
So we're not doing everything we think about, but first thing is inventory. We have to have inventory in a warehouse.
Meant to ask, so 3PL 20 plus minutes ago, third-party logistics, I imagine that's solved in like the Northeast. Is that like a New York?
We have we originally had one set up. We have one in China and we have one in New Jersey. We're about to move it to Texas. There's a variety of reasons I picked the New Jersey one. Some of it was ignorance. Some of it was trying to give our Kickstarter backers the lowest shipping rates. Sure. And but now because people pay for shipping, that's less of a priority. So being like in Texas, for instance, will allow faster shipping to more of the US. Right. So and it also shorter distance for importing. But we serve the United States, Canada from a warehouse in the United States, and then the rest of the world. We don't ship everywhere, but like where we do ship, it just comes out of China right now. And so we actually have this kind of, I like it because it's simple. It doesn't serve everybody as well as I'd like eventually, but essentially we're able to deliver to a lot of countries like Australia and you know the UK and whatever. But it's slow. You have to wait for it to come from China if you're one of those countries. So we are. Slowly kind of addressing that.
And with all this glass, how are deliveries?
We've been really lucky with it. We did a lot of thinking about our packaging, and we do drop tests and all that stuff. So we have pretty robust packaging. We've had minimal breakage, and even in countries like Italy is really notorious for rough mail.
You got to see some of the packages Sarah gets. So all her product comes from Italy.
Oh yeah, I bet. I used to work with Italians, and I know no one loved them well. So we actually had some breakage on our first shipment over. We sent a shipment by air initially to try to fulfill some of that Kickstarter backers, and so some of that got damaged. But in terms of the delivery to people, it's a minimal amount right now, which we're stoked about. Great. So that's good.
Yeah. So I kind of cut off the question initially, which is how are you attempting to prioritize all of the seed that you might want to boil?
Yeah. So we got to have inventory, making guesses about how much to have, based on imperfect data. Right. And so we're trying to figure out that we are starting to, test wholesale. So we've got a handful of people doing some wholesale for us now. I expect we're going to probably double or so the size of wholesalers come the fall. Some of that is going to be important because it's going to be in the UK EU. And so
Fewer places to ship to.
Yeah, so like they can have a faster shipping option that also and it also makes returns a lot easier. So I'm really excited to give those people that option. And then we're also I think wholesale is useful for growing your brand, just raising awareness. So we're doing that kind of thing, and then we have a handful of like marketing kind of initiatives that are in the works, that we're hoping that we're able to pull off at different scales. One of the things that we have ongoing that's worked really well is we created originally it was like a bonus for our Kickstarter community. It's like we call it the Sour House Community Cookbook. And the idea is it's based on the kind of like grandma church cookbook people used to give away and make. And so it's mostly either it's like submitted recipes or sourdough baking tips from our community, and there's also a lot of stuff from me and Jenny in there, and we're just about to do our third edition of it and put it out, so that'll be something we'll talk about sometime in the next few weeks, and then we'll be doing some content from that. We'll use that to drive some of the other channels as we go into the fall. And we'll probably do maybe like a bundle or something, and stuff like that. And then we're hoping PR will be a part of it this year. And I don't know. It's like other than that, it's like operation stuff. Like because we're like moving our warehouse, and we're going to be testing a new warehouse, and like hopefully the fulfillment goes well. One thing that's really changed since Kickstarter is like customer service is a bigger piece of everything, and we do it ourselves. I do a lot of it, and so that's like a daily requirement that also goes up and down. And so when we're more successful, we sell more stuff, I get more questions. And so that actually the busier the business is, the more I'm a little bit bogged down by that.
Yeah.
And so it's really great to be able to interact with your customer and understand them and hear them directly. But I easily foresee us getting overwhelmed by that and trying to figure out how we deal with that, like about whether outsourcing or hiring somebody or whatever is like, that's a big question mark for me. And we may end up hiring somebody part-time or outsourcing something for the fall.
Building your own little recipe guide of how to respond to the standard
and like
questions.
My dream is, at least initially, to hire all sourdough bakers in the country into the company, and for if we do hire anybody as a real consultant, part-timer or full-timer. And so I'd like, because we get three kinds of questions. Like one is just shipping stuff.
Sure.
Where's my order, returns, things like that. Occasionally we get like, I don't know how to use this. I have a product question, something's broken, whatever. And then there's also sourdough advice. And so if someone knows at least something about sourdough and can kind of quickly answer that, that's a huge help,
My wife works with pasta makers. And so they, at least at a couple intervals, and maybe it's now full-time, they had like a pasta hotline. So like if you're experiencing like if this is a non-emergency situation, call 911 if it's an emergency. But if this is a pasta, you can reach out to us.
I wanted to launch something like that last year on the holidays, and I still have it on the list. And that's one of those things where it's like I have a wacky idea and I have to talk Jenny into it, and I actually have a budget and I have the idea for it, but like I don't know if it will happen this year or not.
I mean, there's we're in a place. Ernest has that one of their businesses is a Bright Bell, and so it's like 45 primarily women that
they do call answers.
They call answering.
Well, they do customer service type stuff too.
They do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So like, theoretically, it could be locally done hotline to answer.
I do that. My dream is like a bunch of like old grandmas
who actually know sourdough.
Yeah, they like and like so they have the grandma hotline.
Yeah, and it's like
because Butterball does that.
But you can't get them off the phone. That would be like the best part.
Right, it's most expensive. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
No, that's. I mean, I'm into it. And then for a little bit of self-indulgence before we wrap up, the only we've made a couple loaves of bread over the years. We also survived a pandemic, and so like many, we tried it for the first time. But pizza, I've used sourdough to make pizza dough, and then I've done like a couple day rises to make pizza really great. I imagine you'll have a link somewhere online, but do you have any pizza sourdough? Like, how do I think about pizza making as opposed to sourdough bread making?
So I think I'm a big advocate of sourdough pizza. I think it's going to be better than a lot of stuff you get around the country. I think that more pizza makers should be playing with sourdough pizza because it just is an easy way to up your game. It's more of a philosophy, I think, than a style, in my opinion. It's like, because you can do any style of pizza making with sourdough. It's just like, do you want that flavor and time and process or not? I have a little blog on our website about this. We're going to actually have a similar set of tips in the next cookbook that we're putting out, but the community cookbook. But my view is like, I know there's a lot of pizza geeks out there, just like there's a lot of sourdough geeks. Sure. And you can be really fussy about it, and there's beautiful pizzas to be made. But I think for most people, and for me as a dad and somebody who doesn't have a ton of time, it's like I have this kind of philosophy of the good enough loaf or the good enough pizza. Like I know it all can be intimidating, but really most of what you make at home, even your first few tries, will be better than a lot of stuff you get at the store. And sure. And so for pizza, I typically use whatever dough I'm making bread with. Like I'll make a big bucket of dough and have maybe 4 or 5 loaves worth in a go, and I'll bake 1 or 2 to start with, and then I'll keep the leftover in the fridge, and that might turn into pizza. And so you can. There's when you bake, you talk about hydration, like wetter doughs or higher hydration, lower doughs. And so a lot of people use like a drier dough for pizza, and you might add a little olive oil in some cases or whatever. And that might not be the dough that I have in the fridge, but I find it works okay.
What is a low percentage? So
people will use doughs anywhere from like 60 to like 85%. Like an average dough might be like 70%, 75%.
Bread dough or pizza?
Pizza, I typically see lower. I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think there's about 60. I think it's 60, a kilogram 65 of flour, and about 600 of water.
Yeah.
Is what I normally am using.
But I use 80 percentage hydration dough. It's all fine. And where's that line between a focaccia and a pizza? It's just like a lot of time I love making little rounds. I like bubbles. I like to have crust. My wife doesn't like crust. My kids, have all their kind of opinions. And so a lot of times when I'm busy, I just slop out something that's like a big sheet tray of stuff, and I make everybody's little sections with all their like topping needs, and like I just bake that. And sometimes I put too much dough on there and it looks more like a focaccia, and sometimes it's like a little bit thinner, it looks more like a pizza. It's all fine.
Love it. That is life.
Yeah.
that is life. And one of my favorite things, and I kind of sat on it, I'm like, I don't know if I need to say it, but in Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Chef / 4-Hour Chef, there's one of the parts that stuck with me is that he has people go into like their living room on their knees with a pan and put like whatever beans they have or rice they have in the pan and practice flipping rice and beans so that they're less fearful when it comes to cooking. You can practice with really low stakes. And what I'm seeing here is like, while it's beautiful, it is an opportunity to allow people to practice with like go bowling with the bumpers on in some way or another. And there's nuance, and it could still go wrong. It somehow could get hot, somehow could get cold. But it allows for the higher likelihood of the pins to get hit. And I'm pro that. I think that's a really, really, you're onto something here, and I'm excited to see what happens next for Sour House.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I think that's always a good kind of strategy, because like I think most people want complicated things to be made easier. And while there's always a community that wants to do something more perfectly, like I think the broader community is obviously trying to get started and do things easier. So that's where we've ended up, and I appreciate you noticing that. And there's a lot of layers of thought into our products that have tried to help that, and hopefully we'll continue to succeed at it.
Well, how would people follow along if they were so inclined, or if they wanted to perhaps get the next version of the cookbook?
Yeah, so you can always find us at sourhouse.co. That's sourhouse.co online. And then we're on Instagram and social channels. Life at Sourhouse is our handle. And then the cookbook, there's a pop-up that happens on our website, but also in the footer, you can find a link to the cookbook. Download the one we have. If you download the current one, you will, and you're still on our list, we'll just send you the updates as they come out. And yeah, I think Instagram and our website, getting on our list, those are the best ways to kind of stay with us.
Amazing. We'll have links to all that stuff in the show notes and in the emails and posts that follow. But this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for the time.
Thanks for having me on. It's been great talking to you. Thanks so much.
Honestly, I can't wait to follow along and see what's next. I can't believe you're less than a year old. It's crazy.
Well, thanks.